Welcome to our October affiliates meeting. Now we're in the portion we're going to talk about there's FIT and then there's Web FIT. And again, it is my pleasure and honor to introduce three fantastic VWS alumni tonight. So first up, we have Connie Chang. She is, in my class of 2005, and she's an OBGYN at UCLA Health, and she was a former management consultant and of course a competitive athlete while she was at Webb. So I'm glad to have her here. And then again, we have Rita Forte from the class of 99. We've secretly been admiring Rita from all her records that are at school. And she has a great kind of social media presence, so you can kind of check her out. And again, so I think Rita is in marketing up in Oakland, and she also co-founded the Women's All B-Ball organization. So it's super cool to have her kind of give us her perspective on that. And then again, we have another dear classmate of mine, Emily Hammett. She has an incredible journey from kind of finance professional to like boutique fitness marketer. I was trying to come up with a short intro for her. And so she's all about making the lifestyle that you want. And she's a firm believer that you can have fun while doing your job. So I'm excited for you guys to hear kind of her perspective as well. And again, we have Laura Wensley, who's our Senior Director of Alumni Relations in the background, kind of, monitoring the chat box and helping us out with some tech needs. So again, we're just going to get started and kind of have our panelists each introduce themselves and kind of talk about where they are in their career right now and kind of what they were involved in at Webb. So Connie, we're going to start with you first.
Hi, thanks for the introduction. Like Jen said, I graduated class of 2005. After college, I worked briefly in management consulting, went to med school at Yale, and now I'm working after residency as an OBGYN. Our new office is out of Pasadena, so we're always looking for new patients and trying to spread the word on women's health and wellness. I think it's important that even though I'm early in my career, I find it to be a really important passion of mine to reach out to women of all ages. So not only like the adolescents who might need more advice on menstruation or contraception, all the way to perimenopausal and menopausal women, because obviously women's health doesn't stop when you're in menopause. It lasts far after. So I'm really excited to get to share with you some of my advice and some of the information I have on women's health.
Great, thanks Connie. And then I'm going to hand it over to Rita again to kind of introduce herself, what she does in her career and what she did at Webb.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Yep, Rita Forte, class of 99. So at Webb, was definitely involved in sports every season, from cross country to basketball. One year I did soccer and then track. And also was heavily involved in leadership. Ended up being ASB president my senior year. And so just got into a whole bunch at Webb. That's one of the things that I remember of being Webb, is that you got to really explore and do everything. And I really appreciated that. So after Webb, I went on to Williams College in Massachusetts. And my senior year there, I became a DJ, a radio DJ. So that was actually the next 10 years of my life. In my 20s, I was a radio DJ. Now I'm well into my 30s, and I learned a lot in marketing and promotions. And so that's what I do right now. I run a marketing boutique agency here in the Bay Area, helping small businesses and nonprofits with their marketing needs. And then, like she said earlier, I co-founded a women's basketball organization called Women's All B-Ball, really just giving opportunity for women to continue to play basketball after college age, because it's rare that recreationally women can really play the sport that they love, that I grew to love at Webb. So we have an organization, of course, because of COVID, we're not really operating right now, unfortunately, but hopefully we can return next year. But we've been around for about 5 years. So glad to be here.
Great, thank you, Rita. And then last up is Emily. So take it away, Em.
Awesome, thank you, Jen. So my name's Emily. I graduated from Webb in 2005. And I feel like I was involved in, you know, a lot of things from, I played water polo and did swimming, and I had a radio show, and I was our senior class president. Let's see, I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of other things too. But after graduating from Webb, I went to school at University of San Diego and majored in accounting, and then got my master's in taxation, which is riveting, I'm sure, for a lot of people. And after college, I really started down that career path and thought that that was going to be, you know, where I'd spend the entirety of my career. And I started working at one of the big four accounting firms, and you know, had a couple of early promotions, you know, as I jumped around to a couple of different firms. And the last position that I held was a CFO position at Northwestern Mutual that I managed 4 different offices. So that ended up being, you know, really great experience for me as I transitioned into something that's a little bit more entrepreneurial. And you know, I definitely left that corporate America lifestyle because I wanted to pursue something, one, that I was much more passionate about. You know, when I was in college, I definitely didn't have that mindset of connecting my career with something that I'm passionate about. For me, it was always a job, you get a paycheck, and that's what work is about. And so I'm really excited that that's something that I can do now. You know, I now own 4 Pilates studios in Orange County, and I started a separate company that is a physical product that is basically the same idea as a yoga towel, but for the Pilates reformer. That's called Salt and Honey, and have been investing in real estate and that sort of stuff since then as well too. So I look at this entrepreneurial path as something that's going to continue to evolve with me in my own life as my life evolves. And you know, we'll see what comes next.
Great. Thank you guys so much. Again, so excited you guys are here tonight. So we're going to start with a question that I hope all of us can answer. And it's like kind of, you know, the overall theme is kind of like staying fit kind of during the pandemic. So what do you guys think, in your opinion, is the importance of staying fit? And we're going to try to kind of touch upon kind of staying kind of mentally, you know, fit. I mean, there's days where I kind of unravel and I think I can't do this much longer, but I kind of have to step away and kind of recharge. And usually the way I recharge is to do something active, right? Whether it's going for a walk or going for a run, or, you know, maybe logging in to do like a yoga or Pilates class online is the way that I kind of make sure that I'm staying fit and that I can be present for my job and present for my family. So I'm going to go in the same order. Connie, kind of what is the importance of staying fit for you right now, particularly as a new mother and kind of going into as an attendee too?
That's a great question. I think that both as a mom and also as a healthcare provider, I have a tendency to put other people's needs above my own. And I'm sure a lot of moms and parents can identify with this. But I think that you know, in seeing how mental health is so connected to physical health, just for my own parents and for my own family, I think it's really important to myself right now to invest in health on a daily basis, making sure that I'm well mentally, making sure I'm taking care of myself physically, because honestly, if you wait until you're unhealthy or unwell to see a physician or to seek help, then it's a lot more work to kind of undo some of the changes that have already happened in your life. And so I try and remember that. And whenever I have, you know, like an hour free or something, I try to make the choice where, you know, I could spend this hour meal prepping for my baby for the next week, or I could spend this hour reviewing charts and responding to my patients' messages. But instead, I'm trying to make a cognizant effort to spend that hour on myself, because I know it's an investment. It'll make me a better mom. It'll make me a better wife. It'll make me a better doctor. So I'm trying to use that time to invest in myself, whether it's physically, you know, trying to work out or get a little bit of fitness in, or just kind of unwind mentally, so that I'm fresh for my patients and my family the next day. Great.
Thank you, Connie. I think you like touch upon a topic that we've been trying to talk about with our parent community at Webb is self-care. So last spring, certainly our director of counseling and health education, Mel Bauman, kind of did a whole hour presentation on that. So again, I think it's just something that we have to remind ourselves of as parents and as caretakers. You know, there's a lot of research that shows that with the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world, kind of it's disproportionately affecting women because we carry on the burden of a lot of stuff. So it's great to be reminded that we have to take care of ourselves. So again, to you, Rita, what is the importance of staying fit for you kind of right now? And kind of what are some activities that you are able to do, right? And that kind of, you know, sets you in the right mindset, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I thought about this question because I was like, what am I doing? And one side of it is doing more of what you were saying, which is just going on walks, getting up, getting out, you know, since we're working from home a lot, getting in those 6,000 or 10,000 steps is way harder. Like I look at my Samsung and I'm like, oh my God, 500 steps today. That's like, you know, nothing from here to the kitchen a couple times. So intentionally getting outside, going on longer walks with my dog. I have a bike. I don't have a Peloton. That would be great. But I do have a home bike here too that I'm using way more. But the things that I think I wanted to share were, and I'm not a parent, but I do have nephews, is thinking outside of the box in terms of doing things new, right? Maybe not necessarily new activities, but something that you didn't normally do. So one of those things for me has been like asking my brother and his wife to take my nephews off their hands so that I can just literally get out of my head and have a conversation with a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old one day, you know, and just for the whole day, literally just get in their mind and you know, just really get out of my consistent thinking about, you know, work mind. So that's one of the things that I've adopted during this pandemic. Another thing that I said that I would never do, and I'm not this type of person, but I totally have kind of leaned into it because it's really helped me to just kind of decompress, maybe whether it be at the end of the day or maybe even in the middle of the day. And that is like play games on my phone, you know, like I maybe had one game on my phone pre-pandemic. I have maybe like 3 or 4 now, to where it's just like something that I could just kind of take my focus on and play with, like right then and there for like a half hour just to like get my mind out of something, right? And so I said I would never do that. I was not that type of person, but you know, that's it's really helped me in this time to really just, hey, let me play a game on my phone real quick. And then the last thing, this is something that I actually thought of recently, scrolling on Instagram as we all may do, or on social media. I look at a lot of dance videos, like, you know, people dance, you know, different groups dancing in the studio, hip hop, whatever. Of course, I told you all I used to be a DJ, so music still is within me. And I decided, and I also used to dance when I was actually pre-web, 8th grade and under. But I realized that I loved it and I really missed it. And so one of my goals right now is just to kind of get back in shape to like maybe join a dance class next year or something like that. And I never thought I'd even bring that back into my life, but I'm looking forward to doing that like soon or next year. Yeah.
I mean, those are certainly some very practical suggestions. And I think it's great that you brought up kind of, you know, interacting with your family. I think we all kind of need to step in and support each other, whatever our, you know, I know we call it bubble or whatever your unit is, right? Like we're all kind of leaning on each other. And it's great that you're able to kind of talk with your nephews who are 5 and 10, because they have, I'm sure you guys get into fun conversations. And then the whole thing about music, I totally agree. I'm totally not a dancer, but sometimes as a break when I, you know, the email alerts come in, bing, 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 and I need to take a break, I just dance it out, play some music, jump around. No one has to see it, right? And now you guys all know that's what I'm secretly doing. And it's great. It's great to just kind of dance around and kind of shake the stress out, literally. And on the topic of games, I'm so glad you brought it up because, you know, we're running a full kind of web program and the student leaders are actually doing virtual events online. And so the first weekend they actually had Minecraft, where the whole thing was to design your dorm room in Minecraft, and we had a lot of attendance that way. So I think, you know, again, there's a balance between, you know, on and off screen time, but also kind of channeling kind of your brain to a totally other thing. Like my game is like Mario Kart and Tetris. Love it. Can't get enough of it. And Emily's smiling because we used to play during study hours and Jones instead of doing homework.
I'm glad to hear you're still doing it.
Yeah. All right. So Emily, over to you. Kind of as an entrepreneur, you've kind of had to adapt during this time, during this shutdown. So kind of what are you doing to kind of keep fit mentally and physically, and why is it important to you?
Yeah, I love that this is something that we're talking about right now, and you know, especially for women, and I love that, you know, our audience is primarily women, because it's such an important topic, and it's something that, you know, I've seen through my work in the studios and serving. You know, our average client is in her 50s, and you know, as women, you know, we're brought up and raised in a way that we're kind of taught to, you know, constantly be caring for others. We're the caregivers for our families, for, you know, as our parents age, for our parents, you know, when we have children, for our children. And we are just constantly putting everybody's needs in front of our own. And, you know, something that I've really learned, you know, recently, since I've been kind of on this health journey professionally, is you know, this concept of you can't pour from an empty cup. And so basically what that means is, in order, you have to kind of fill your own cup up first, in doing these kind of self-care daily rituals is really my, you know, best recommendation. Is what can you do every single day that is going to fill your own cup up, so that you can be, you know, like Connie said, a good mom, you know, you can show up at work and, you know, do the best, and you can wear all those hats and be that person for all of those people that you're taking care of. But, you know, I think it was a really good, you know, learning experience for me, being in the studios and seeing women that, you know, have kind of gone through this path before me, that are in their 50s and plus now. And, you know, they've kind of woken up one day and, you know, now their kids are out of their house, and, you know, maybe they've lost their husband, or, you know, whatever it is. And they're kind of looking at themselves for the first time, thinking, oh my gosh, how did I get here? And, you know, I think that's the most important thing, you know, for us all to really be considering. And so for me personally, you know, I really like to think of it as like a mind, body, and soul type of perspective. And so, you know, from the body perspective, I think that's kind of the easy one for me, because I'm in fitness. I love Pilates. I do Pilates, you know, basically almost every single day. And if it's not, you know, if I'm not able to get into the studio and take a class, you know, I'm at least, you know, getting out and taking the dogs for the walk, or doing something that's active every single day, and just making that promise to myself that I'm going to give myself 10 minutes every day. It doesn't have to be like a full big production, but doing something, you know, even if it's only 10 minutes that you can dedicate to yourself every single day to do something physical, you know, and kind of continuing with that mind, body, and soul, you know, reading books, is something that really kind of recharges my battery, and that, you know, I just love to do. It's kind of how I unwind. And I mean, gosh, what else do I do? I feel like I do a lot. For me personally, I have a routine of kind of getting that stuff in the morning, because if I don't get it in the morning, then there's like all of the excuses and everything that happens throughout the day, that maybe you're tired at the end of the day, or something unexpected comes up, whatever it is. So, I mean, what works for me personally is just making sure that that's how I start my day. And then after I've kind of given myself, again, like at least that 10 minutes for myself, then I can go about my day and kind of serve all the other people that I'm serving.
Great. Thanks, Em. She kind of segued, you know, really well into my second question. So maybe they're actually reading the outlines I gave them. So kind of, again, we're going to go around in that order, starting with you, kind of, Connie. What are some ways that you maintain a healthy routine? I mean, certainly for me, I'm a huge foodie, so I try to eat really well Sunday through Thursday. I do on my meal prep. I try to, you know, eat, you know, more vegetables than meat. But then like on my weekends, like I want to have good food, right? That could be French fries sometimes. That could be, you know, very satisfying bowl of like Taiwanese beef noodle soup. So that's kind of, you know, my routine in terms of like eating well during the week. Cause I do notice that when I do eat well during the week and do my meal preps, I feel better, right? And so kind of Connie, what are some ways that you maintain your routine with all the things that you're juggling?
You know, I think that's something I'm constantly working on. But I do think so. A couple of things that have really helped me. I think leaving work as at work, at least for some amount of time, is so important. So, for instance, I'm at work. Maybe I needed to do a surgery, see some patients in clinic, and then deliver a baby. Say there's so much charting that needs to happen afterwards. There are patient messages to respond to. That could take forever. But what I try to do is I try and be as efficient as possible, you know, while I'm at work. I try not to make myself feel guilty, which honestly has happened quite often because I just gave birth like 10, 11 months ago. And so it's been really easy to make myself feel like, oh, I'm not a good mom because I only see my kid 1 hour a day or 2 hours a day. And I'm sure that other moms can, or parents can relate. There's just so many ways to make yourself feel guilty. But when I'm at work, I try and tell myself, this is what I'm doing. And I try and stay mindful, like focusing on my task at hand. If I do start feeling guilty or bad, I try and draw on like a recent memory of my, you know, my family or my kid. I try and take some time away from work if I can, to, you know, FaceTime with my family, or if I'm at lunch, if I can take a lunch break, I try and run home, and then, you know, feed my kid. But I guess the point is just that when I'm at work, and if I need to take short breaks, then I do. But when I come home, I try and at least carve out a certain amount of time. Like when I'm with my kid or with my family, I try not to worry about work. That, you know, everything can wait. If it was an emergency, I would have taken care of it at work. And yes, sometimes I do need to leave my family time because I'm on call, I need to get called into work, etc. But I try to put my phone away when I'm with my family. I try not to worry about other things. I try not to think about them at all. And it's part of like focusing in and being mindful. And then I think, you know, that's kind of the main routine that I've set for myself that has really helped me enjoy my time. That way I actually feel less guilty because I'm like, well, I only had 1 hour to spend with my family today, but I spent that 1 hour having fun, not worrying about my patients and not answering texts or looking at my phone. So it's kind of what I do on a daily basis. And I would say it is kind of a balance also. Like you said, Jen, diet, like your diet, it's a balance of things you enjoy and things that are good for you. And hopefully there's some overlap between both. But I think that in terms of like my balance, just carving out the set times for my set activities and just knowing and giving myself a little bit of grace and forgiveness for the times that where I do have, you know, let work bleed into my family life or affect my mood and vice versa. Just knowing that I'm human and it's a work in progress. So I think that I'm still working on it. I'd be lying if I said, I mean, I'm like 34 years old or 33 years old. I'd be lying if I were to tell you that I knew all the answers to keeping a good balance, but that's kind of what's helped me so far.
Great. Thanks, Connie. And it's kind of fun because if you guys haven't noticed, Connie, Emily, and myself were all in the class of 2005. And Connie, as a student, brought a certain sense of like intensity with her with whatever she did, right? She was competitive in tennis. She ran track and she like, you know, was always ahead of like college applications. And she was, you know, senior class vice president and she was always going. To see her kind of right now, right? I've known her for you know, close to 20 years. To see her right now saying that, you know, she is trying to do, taking care of herself, right? She's enjoyed being a mother. She's celebrating the successes that she has in her career, is really exciting. So it's really nice to see that. And I hope, you know, parents that you are in the audience that you're going to see that with your own students as well, right? I mean, they're still teenagers and it might seem like they're growing up really quickly, but I still think once they go off to university, once they start in their career and they have some time to reflect back on what they're passionate about and what they want to do, kind of seeing that trajectory of change is really lovely. All right, so Rita, same question to you. Kind of how do you maintain some kind of routine or balance in your life right now?
Yeah, I have this quote or saying that I always say to myself, that I'm consistently inconsistent. That's just pretty much my life. Because so much goes on in your life where things may happen that may just throw you off track. Like I'm not just talking about during pandemic time, and I will in just a second, but like so many things have gone on in my life up to this point to where hey, I may have been going down this one road, but I've had to go down, completely make a left or completely make a right, and that's just going to happen in life. And so I found, just at least in my life, that just saying that, hey, I'm consistently inconsistent, it kind of goes back to, or goes to what Connie said, like giving yourself grace, like allowing yourself to go off track, allowing yourself to have to switch it up at a moment's notice. And so one thing I think a lot of folks that were preaching at the beginning of this pandemic that I was already kind of used to, which is like, there's no rules right now. You need to make the rules up as you go, because this is the new normal. There is no normal now. So my routine really has consisted of really kind of the same pre and post pandemic, and really just taking my time, allowing myself, whether if it's food, whether it's taking breaks, and really going with my gut feeling on how I feel with things, and going with it. If I want to wake up in the morning and I don't want to have breakfast, I don't feel that, then I may not do that. I may wait until 11, 12 o'clock. And it's like, it's okay. Allowing yourself to say that today it's okay. Maybe you just have that tea and then you have lunch. It's okay. And really just drumming that in. I think that's actually really a lesson in entrepreneurship. I'm sure Emily probably can, and Connie, you're an entrepreneur too. When you're an entrepreneur, stuff is just going to go awry and you have to roll with the punches. And that's kind of what this moment is about. And so I just lean into those practices that I've really had in my life in general, which is just kind of going with the flow. One thing I do on the consistency side, though, is like maybe once 1 week out of a month, maybe I'll try to intentionally at least write down what I'm eating, just so I can mentally have it in my brain for maybe like the rest of the month or the next 6 weeks, so I can kind of get a tab on my routine. Like, okay, I had DoorDash twice that week, maybe, just it's kind of a check and balance on myself. So writing down is always great, whether, just jot it in your phone really quickly or something like that. That's always helpful. And I've always been doing that, like probably for the past maybe 5 or so years, just to keep a check and balance on myself.
Yeah, so that's great, Rita. I have something that I have on my fridge that I remind myself kind of when, we had to shut down campus in March 2020, is that the only certainty right now is uncertainty. So I have to be able to sit with that comment and have to be kind of do real-time planning, think of scenarios, but also just be comfortable with the fact that the things that we all love about web are not going to change. And just because it is a pandemic and that we're learning in different ways and that we're kind of stretching our minds and our bodies in different ways, doesn't mean that I can't have some kind of balance and routine. So I always remind myself that there is certainty and uncertainty, kind of going along with what you said about consistency and inconsistency. I think it has a nice tie-in. All right, you're up. So kind of, what do you do?
Yeah, so I guess I kind of jumped the gun a little bit with having, a morning routine, and that's what works well with me. But I think just to get a little bit more, practical, and something that I really, and it's funny, this is, I feel like, going to be a little counterintuitive coming from the person that's like the fitness person, but really something that I feel very strongly about is that the first step to, you know, overall health and wellness, I really do believe is food. And I feel like food just plays such an important role in your overall health, and that you could be feeding your body something that's going to be healing your body from the inside out, you know, or you could be feeding it something that's, you know, not so great for your body. And, you know, food is such a like sensitive and almost triggering topic for so many people, especially women. When the topic of food gets brought up, we all just like get a little bit uncomfortable, and like we get a little bit defensive over like what we eat and, you know, why we eat it and all that sort of stuff. And there's so much of like an emotional connection to food, especially, you know, in our culture, and that there's so much that we do to, you know, like celebrate with people and, you know, oh, I earned this cheat meal and all of that sort of stuff. And so anytime I bring up food, I'm always very careful to, you know, bring it up in a gentle way where there's not like guilt associated with it, because, you know, like you said, like it's okay to, you eat French fries every once in a while or whatever it is, you know, it's not like you have to be perfect 100% of the time. You know, it's part of that relationship with food is like allowing yourself to have those things and not feel guilty. And so on the food front, something that, you know, has really helped, you know, me and, you know, my husband and I a lot is there's so many options out there nowadays that are like really healthy meal delivery options, like not like a DoorDash where it's coming from a restaurant, but like there's two that I really recommend. One is called Model Meals. It's basically the idea is they're kind of modeling how to eat, and it's a Whole30 based diet. So it's really clean, easy way to, like, you know, I think they do deliveries twice a week. And what I love is that, like, I have food that's ready to go that I can heat up and be eating like within 2 minutes, and I don't even have to think about it, and I don't have to spend all of that time meal prepping. You know, in an ideal perfect world, yeah, I would probably do it all myself, but in a realistic world where I'm also trying to juggle, you know, a million other things, you know, cooking for me is something I really enjoy doing. And so it's something that I do try to make time for, you know, when I have that space and that time. But at the end of the day, like, we all need to eat multiple times every single day. So if there are little tips and tricks that we can do to make it easy. So Model Meals is a suggestion that I have if you're interested in Whole30. The one that I actually really recommend the most is called Methodology. I've just found that it's a really good way to get lots of like fresh greens and like leafy vegetables and all that sort of stuff. So that's the one that I probably should have mentioned first, because I really like that one the most. But just having stuff like that in your house that is super easy, especially during times like this where, like, I mean, we're all probably eating out less than is what's normal anyway. And just taking that like extra thing that you need to do of like preparing a healthy and delicious meal off of your plate is great. And, you know, again, kind of just bringing up the like emotional side to food, and like having that relationship with yourself, and just being aware of like the emotional connection that you have with food. And like, if you're eating something and then you're carrying around all this guilt, and now you're feeling like, oh, I need to go, I ate this last night, so tomorrow I need to go do this extreme workout, you know, that's not really like a healthy thing to do. It's okay if you're not perfect 100% of the time. But you know, I think really just taking time to kind of be at peace with yourself and listen to that internal dialogue that you're having and that you're struggling with. And, you know, none of us, like, the things that we all say to ourselves in our own head, like, we would never say to probably anybody else, let alone like the people that we love. Like, you would just never say those things to anybody else. And so I think like taking that time, you know, whether it's, you know, through meditation or journaling, or just really like unpacking what are the things, like, what is that internal dialogue that I'm having with myself, and just raising awareness to it, you know, not necessarily beating yourself up over it, but, you know, meditation, journaling helps with that a lot as well too. And, this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but, for me personally, something that has like, I've just really noticed, it's like almost raises my cortisol level, and I feel like my heart rate kind of goes up a little bit, is watching the news right now. That's like just not good for me. It's not something that like makes me feel good. And so I've noticed that lately, like when the news is on in the background, like I either just need to turn it off or like go to a different room if my husband's watching it. But like I've been consciously unplugging from that, because I've noticed that it's really affecting me, and it's stressing me out. And again, that like mental health side of it is just so important to me.
No, that's great, Em. I totally agree. To kind of listen, I think kind of all three of you have touched upon like giving yourself grace and letting yourself be okay with whatever you're feeling that day, whatever that is, right? And kind of listening to your body, to your mind, and kind of doing that. And then kind of speaking on kind of turning off the news, again, kind of one of the great things that I'm trying to do for myself every weekend is I try to stay off of my work email for about 36 hours. And I think that's really helpful for me. Kind of I turn my notifications off. I don't have, my web.org email downloaded as an app. And to me, my phone stays kind of a private thing for myself during the weekend. And so I started with 24 hours. I'm up to 36 hours. And just this past weekend, I went, full 48 hours with not, and it was all okay. Like I understand that sometimes parents want to reach me and things are going on. But, I think letting everyone kind of settle and enjoy the downtime that they have, it is really important. So kind of my next round of questions, I'm going to get a little bit more specific. So again, we're going to start with Connie. So Connie, again, can you talk a little bit about like why it's important to initiate kind of like self-care during this time, as a woman? And can you kind of talk about, certainly like what it's like for a patient to visit like the hospital or a doctor's office right now, right? Like I, will share a little bit. I recently had a telehealth appointment, which I thought really helpful. And I was able to talk with my doctor about whether I required a hospital visit, right? So I think kind of steps and things are changing. So kind of what is your advice? Like if, a parent is like, my student isn't feeling well, should I call the doctor? Should I just go straight to the hospital? Like kind of how are we supposed to kind of navigate that right now?
Those are really great questions. And I think it's like you kind of mentioned various components in that. So I'm going to start first with, I wanted to address something that both Emily and Rita both kind of, just to like finish up the last question, that is something I forgot to mention. Both Emily and Rita mentioned checking in with themselves. And I think that is so important. So as a woman, we have a lot of, issues in our health that can change over time. And I think it's so important to not just check in with yourself, as to what you're eating, like Rita mentioned, or checking in with yourself and journal, like Emily mentioned, but also check in as to what symptoms or what issues are you having that you're ignoring right now? Because I know that, if you have your period is late, or your period hasn't come, or you're experiencing, this or that symptom that you're really not sure what it is and it's new, or you're not having sex, or sex is painful. These are all things that you could choose to ignore. Like I'm guilty of, we all are. You could choose to ignore it and just address it later when it becomes a huge issue. Or, we might not even notice it because we're so busy taking care of other people. But I think every so often, it's really important just to check in and say, hey, is this my new baseline? Is this something new? Is this something abnormal? Because I wholeheartedly believe that people, women, men, patients themselves, they know their body better than anybody else. And if something's wrong. So if you check in every so often and find that something's a little bit off, then that's a reason to try and reach out and see what can be done about it. Whether it doesn't have to be reaching out to a physician, it doesn't have to be reaching out to a therapist, it could be any variety of interventions, which kind of leads me into Jen's question, which is why is it important to see a doctor? Why is it still important to not stall out on healthcare right now, even during COVID? And what does healthcare look like? Well, I'll start with the easy one. So what does healthcare look like right now? Luckily, COVID hasn't, luckily with all the technology we have, COVID hasn't completely dissuaded us or from being able to provide healthcare for our patients. So I would say when you come to like our office, for instance, or UCLA Ronald Reagan, because those are the two hospital systems I'm most familiar with, Ronald Reagan and Westwood at UCLA. So first of all, every morning when I come in, like at 7 or 6:30 or 7, I already see our secretaries wiping down every single pen with disinfectant. So that's one, which is crazy. Like literally every writing utensil, every desk, every table, every chair, and every surface. All providers are required to wear masks, and some of us, like I choose to wear an N95 even. I reuse my N95, which honestly, we really shouldn't be doing, but because of the shortage of, personal protective equipment going on, that's what we have to do. So I've been reusing mine. And I use that in the office, not just to protect myself, but to protect my patients, because I'm exposing one patient to the last patient if I'm not careful. So we're all wearing masks. We try to limit the number of patients who are in the office because it is an enclosed space. So I would say that if you need to see the doctor or your child needs to see the doctor, one thing to advocate for is to ask, hey, I'd like to wait outside until it's time for my child's appointment or my appointment. Can you give me a call? They should be able to say yes. You shouldn't have to wait in the waiting room with like 10 other people. We personally limit the number of people in the waiting room. We space out our visits so that no patients really should be overlapping. And on top of that, I would say other things, I'm trying to employ telehealth as much as possible. So I've really tried to make an effort in thinking of, okay, excuse me, sorry about that. I've tried to make an effort in trying to think about, does this patient really need to come in for a follow-up visit? Can this be done online? If it's just reviewing results, if it's a discussion of next steps and it doesn't require a physical exam, I would encourage you to to advocate for yourself and ask for that telehealth visit. We cannot charge as much for a telehealth visit as we can for an in-person visit, but that's not a reason to bring patients in when it's not necessary. So I think that's one way you can advocate for yourself as well. And then I'd say lastly, bundling care. So the way that healthcare, I think, has traditionally been provided is that we do workup sequentially. So let's say you have a problem and you come in, we think, okay, well, here's one preliminary step where we can start with. And then once this is done, then we can think about next steps. But I would encourage you, if and when you see the doctor, to ask, okay, well, if this is positive, what is the next step? Because can we just do that today? They should be able to take the time and get all of your healthcare taken care of in one day, even if it happens a little bit out of order or, a little bit earlier than they would normally do, because it's part of our responsibility as physicians to also think about COVID and try and make care as bundled and easy for our patients as possible. And then just lastly, in terms of why is it important to still see the doctor or still seek healthcare during COVID? Trust me, I don't know about you guys and how like your level of anxiety or fear about COVID is, but I am very concerned about COVID. I'm like one of those people that literally does not leave their house if they can help it. I just go to the hospital. I have not eaten out at any restaurants. And so I'm like on the extreme level of caution, but I still think that it is important to just make that one trip at least once a year, or if you have a complaint, to see the physician. And especially, I'm guessing that most of the people listening in the audience, on this listening in are probably in their 40s, maybe their 50s, 60s, or around that age range. And there are a lot of changes that happen during this age range that you might just know from your friends or other people that you're talking to, your sisters or et cetera. But a lot of this information, especially with like, social media, et cetera, is not always data driven. It's not evidence based. And I think you owe it to yourself to get an actual validated and opinion that has been formed through providing healthcare to others and from all of the most recent guidelines. And all it honestly takes is one preventative healthcare visit a year to really to really kind of get ahead of anything that might happen. I still think it's important to go see the doctor. And I think that in terms of your kids, if you find that your kid is sick, I think that you need to triage whether this is something that I think you should always still go to the doctor if necessary, but you should triage in your head, okay, is this something I've seen before? Is this something that I've addressed before in my kid? I know this is what's happening and I can just give the doctor a call. Or if it's something you've never seen before, it's always safer just to go in.
Great, thanks, Connie. I thought that was like kind of some really practical advice on if you do need kind of to see to see a physician, see a doctor, do self-care, all of that. And it's great to kind of hear about the practices that you guys are doing in your office to make sure that everyone is being safe and during this time. So Rita, I wanted to go a little bit specific into your Women's All B-Ball organization that you kind of mentioned in your intro. So can you just walk us through a little bit about like why you co-founded it? And I think a little bit about that is I think it's important for women to have dedicated spaces for healthy competition and for recreation as well, right? So what was your inspiration for finding this organization?
That was it. Having dedicated space. No, it's interesting because we did our organization did a crowdfunding campaign last year. And as we were formulating just our story, so I co-founded Women's All B-Ball with a great friend and colleague of mine, Amanda. And so as we were formulating our story, I really realized that wait, this kind of art all stemmed from going to web. And so first, let me tell you about the organization. So Women's All B-Ball is a women's basketball organization. Again, dedicated to women who want to play basketball recreationally, basically after the age of 21, but we allow 18 and up too. But, we say kind of after the age of 21, everything's legal and all that good stuff. So we have been running for 6 years now, and we would run just drop-in pickup games every Sunday. We've thrown 2 tournaments, 3-on-3 tournaments, and we were going to start like a league where people can really kind of get a little bit even more competitive. But so what I found after graduating from college is that, out in the real world, it's not set up like web, where it's like women's sports and men's sports, equal opportunity. Let me put it like that. When people ask me about Women's All B-Ball, what is that? I say, hey, when you're walking down the street and you pass by a basketball park, a park with a basketball hoop, do you see any women playing? But that completely does not mean that there aren't plenty of women like myself who went to high school, who went to grade school and played, sports their whole life really, and they want to continue playing. And so I just said, if someone doesn't create recreational basketball opportunities for women, I'm going to do it. So of course, about 5-6 years ago, nothing was really created, at least here in my community. I know there's other organizations, as I've learned now that Women's All B-Ball has been created. But we decided to create this organization where we, have the pickup games and the tournaments and so on and so forth. And it's been pretty successful. We've had I think we've connected with over almost 3,000 women out here in the Bay Area, and it's so great. One of our main ways of getting women or letting women know about our games and things like that is this website called meetup.com. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's a great website where you could go on and find basically things that you like to do. Meet up to play cards, meet up to play ping pong, meet up to play whatever. So we have a meetup, group on there where we post when we're going to play the games and where we're going to play the games. And then of course we have our separate dedicated website and everything as well now. But yeah, right after when COVID hit, we shut everything down. As you guys know, NBA is playing in a bubble, WNBA as well too. So you know, we are just kind of going to wait it out and see what happens. Although I do see some sports things ramping back up. But yeah, specifically, I think I was just really spoiled by just going to Webb and really, you know, getting the opportunity to play with women. And really what it's about is playing with your equal. Really what it's about is being in a space where you feel comfortable to be 110%, right? And it's not even really about being embarrassed about how you look and da-da-da-da-da-da, especially when you're talking about physical sports. So again, if we're taking the example of basketball, physically, typically, men are much more physical when they're playing the game. You know, you think about it, you know, men can dunk, women mostly can't. And, you know, of course, I think also when we're talking about games like basketball, maybe, or soccer, or things like baseball, those are sports that, of course, have been, you know, capitalized. So there's also that element of like maybe ego that goes into it more so with men or whatnot. But long story short, women need their own spaces for most recreational sports, so that we can really be our 110 selves and really get 110% workout out of it. You know, playing against someone who's equally matched with us is really, really important. And so every time, literally, like I said, we've been running for about 6 years. After every pickup game, especially if there's new people, myself and my other co-founder, we get thanked so much by the women that attend. They say, thank you for creating this space. Like, we really need this. So I hope to expand, you know, women's all b-ball, and also for others to start, you know, women's all soccer or whatever, to really just, you know, create these opportunities for women post college age, because we need it too. Yes, we're the ones that have the babies, you know, so those things come into play. But we allow the moms to bring their kids to the games, all of that, you know, it's part of the process, it's part of life. But we need that space for ourselves. So that's what Women's All B-Ball provides.
And Rita, don't you feel like playing sports does so much for just like your mental health and like just that little bit of competition and like being able to zone out except for that game just for a little while? Don't you feel like playing sports is like your happiest, and like some of your happiest memories are from sports?
Yes, absolutely. And you get that back, you know, you get the camaraderie, you get to laugh, you know, you get to scream, lash out, you know, in the ways you don't normally do on a day-to-day. Yeah, yes, definitely. All that back. You get to relive your glory days is what a lot of folks say.
All right, Emily, I'm going to have a specific question for you, because one of the things I admire most of having Emily as a friend is kind of her entrepreneur spirit and her mind. And I know that she very quickly adapted her club, like her studios, into an online format right when they shut down in March. So can you talk a little bit about that process, right? You're a business owner, you know, you are obviously very finance savvy, and when studios were closed for that little bit, like how did you do that transition? Like how did you kind of sustain yourself during that process?
Yeah. It was tough. This whole year has obviously been, you know, unexpected for everybody. And, you know, the fitness industry is an industry that's been hit, you know, really hard because, well, one, we were just completely shut down for a number of months. And, you know, then once we were allowed to reopen, you know, it's at a limited capacity. And you know, looking at things from a finance perspective, you know, the outlook's a little bit grim, you know, in that, you know, when we were allowed to reopen, we're allowed to reopen at 10% capacity. And so, you know, what is that even from a business owner perspective? I actually lose more money opening my studios at 10% capacity than completely staying closed because of my payroll costs. So, you know, so that's kind of looking at it from like with my finance hat on. And then, you know, to kind of switch hats a little bit and look at it more from like an entrepreneurial standpoint, you know, something that has always guided me on that front is just kind of, you know, and I think this is something that I definitely learned from Webb is, you know, doing just what I think is the right thing to do. And, you know, when we closed down our studios, you know, by a government mandate initially, I basically set up an online platform for all of my instructors so that they can, you know, if they wanted to teach from home or, you know, I mean, I guess everybody was at home, but remotely somewhere, that they can set up like a donation-based class. And, you know, they were able to use our platforms and, you know, our email marketing and our social media marketing to get their name out there. But it was something that I, you know, didn't participate in at all from a financial standpoint. It's just something that I wanted to offer to my staff because I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And, you know, looking at, you know, we're actually looking right now at expanding and purchasing, you know, more territories and more studios. And it's a little bit of a crazy time to even be considering that when I just said, you know, being open at a 10% capacity, we can't even be profitable at that point. But, you know, I really do believe, especially with what we're doing with Pilates, it's a small group fitness. It's not a big box gym where you're getting hundreds and hundreds of people and a high volume of people coming through. You know, when we are open at full capacity, we have a limit of 12 people in each class. And, you know, what we did pre-COVID was, you know, better than some of the procedures that I've seen in gyms post-COVID. And so, you know, at the end of every class, everybody has their own station and their own space, and it gets disinfected after every single use. Every time something gets touched, at the end of class, it all gets disinfected. So, and then you have your own space, so you're not like right up in somebody else's personal space. So I feel very confident that, you know, coming out of this, that we're going to be poised to, you know, be in a good position. But, you know, right now it's definitely a little bit crazy, but to kind of backstep a little bit and jump onto something, you know, with what Rita was saying about basketball, something that, you know, I think is really important just to touch on, you know, and kind of leave everybody with is, I don't know if everybody else saw this, but when Rita was talking about basketball, like she just completely lit up. Like you can just tell, like she loves it. It brings her so much joy. And, you know, when we're looking, when we're looking for things to do that is physical, you know, I think that's something that you want to look for. You want to look for something that you genuinely think is so much fun and you can't wait to do it. You never want to look at fitness from the perspective of like, you know, almost like a punishment perspective, like, oh, I did this, so I need to go like run 20 miles in order to burn off that, you know, thing that I ate or whatever it is. Like you really should be looking for things that are genuinely fun and just like that you genuinely light up with. And, you know, if you haven't found that yet, like go and try something new. I think it's great that you've gone back to kind of like your roots and, you know, you loved playing basketball when you were in high school and you found that. You know, for me, we didn't have Pilates at Webb, so it took me a little bit longer to find that. But, you know, I think that's like just such a great note, I think probably for me to end it on.
Great. So I know I've certainly been really enjoying the conversation that we have. And, you know, again, I love a good timeline, but I do want to leave a little bit of an opportunity for some Q&A. And so what I'm actually going to do, I've never tried this in a webinar format before, is that I'm actually going to promote one of our parents to a panelist, and she's going to come in, rejoin, and ask us a live question. Well, Melissa, hello. Maybe it's not going to work as well as I want it to work.
Okay, she typed her question in. So
okay, so I'm going to read it out loud. So Melissa's question is for that. Being that it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, at what age should you know, women start doing mammograms, and what diagnostic tool do you feel is the best? An MRI versus traditional mammogram versus an ultrasound?
That's such a great question. So There are two guidelines that are currently in use across the US. One is from the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and the other is the US Preventative Services Task Force. So ACOG, which is who I belong to as an OBGYN, we advocate for mammograms starting age 40. USPSTF, which is the other large governing body, they recommend starting at age 50. But I think this is a conversation you can discuss with your provider, but we always recommend 40. As for the best imaging modality, so we are supposed to recommend mammography. So the normal screening mammogram is sufficient. I know that a lot of states have passed legislation that require us to tell you, hey, if you have dense breast tissue, there may be a modest increase of breast cancer and mammography might not be as sensitive. But actually, if you look at the current published evidence, it does demonstrate that there's not really any meaningful differences in outcomes to using supplemental tests like ultrasounds or MRI over mammography. So we still recommend mammograms as kind of the gold standard. And in addition to that, you should be doing self-breast exams once a month. So that's what we recommend.
All right, there we go. Any other questions? Any other brave souls out there that want to ask questions? Like, don't be shy. We're happy to talk about lots of things.
I guess I want to just add on to that, since since we're on this kind of preventative care question, and I'm not sure someone's going to ask me, but I know that you're thinking it. In terms of other routine healthcare, you really should be getting PAPs. Still, like, it doesn't really matter if you're done childbearing. If you have a uterus and cervix, you should be getting Pap smears. And the type of Pap smears they should be doing right now should be happening every 5 years if they're normal. If they're not normal, then obviously more frequently or different interventions. Other things besides that, you should be doing Kegels. I don't know if you guys know how to do Kegel exercises, but they're very good for strengthening the pelvic floor, which weakens not just with childbearing, but also with just decreased estrogen in your body. Your tissues just aren't as pliable anymore. Your muscles aren't as strong. And so you really should be doing Kegels. You should try and do them 3 times a day. Like 3 sets of 10. You basically use the muscles you use to hold in your urine when you need to hold it in start with 3 seconds each and then let go, and then contract again and let go, and try and work yourself up to 10 seconds if you can. And then I guess the last kind of plug that I would want to say is, I know you guys aren't going to ask me this, or I mean, if you do, then major props, and I would love to answer any questions, but sex is not supposed to hurt. And so if you do find that as time goes on, your ovaries don't work as well because you're approaching menopause, you have less estrogen. And as a result, actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but maybe some of the physicians in the audience do, but with less estrogen, your tissues become less stretchy. Your vagina actually shortens and becomes more narrow. Your tissue becomes more easily torn or more friable, as we say. And so that can cause a lot of discomfort during sex, and that it shouldn't hurt. And we have a lot of interventions to prevent that. So this is definitely something your OBGYN is comfortable talking to you about. So yeah, those are my plugs.
Great. Thanks, Connie. I know when Connie and I were kind of talking about talking points, and she's like, can I go into all of this? And I told her, go right ahead, because I'm all about kind of removing the stigma about talking about our bodies. And, I think all of us on screen here went through some sort of sexual education programming at Webb, and times have changed, right? So the more that as adults and as parents and as family members that you know about your bodies, and the more that you can support other people in your life when they're going through these things, is the same thing, right? So I feel like, if you are a father that's joining us, I kudos to you for staying on for over an hour as we talk about all of these things, right? Maybe you have a daughter, maybe you have a sister, maybe you have a mother, right? So these are all things that we're going to come into as adults. I mean, that it's kind of just life, right? So I appreciate kind of Connie kind of just going straight for it and giving us the science and data behind it, which is really great. And then of course we have, Catherine Cordes, who's our recording secretary. She said, thank you and difficult to talk about. I know that she has a medical background, so it's nice to see our attendees kind of interact.